Sarah Mitchell's alarm clock rang at 5 in the morning. She opened her tired eyes and looked at the ceiling of her small bedroom. Another day was starting and she already felt exhausted. She worked at a diner from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Then she rushed to her second job at a grocery store, where she worked until 9 at night. Every single day felt the same. Wake up, work, come home, sleep, and do it all again. She got out of bed quietly and walked down the narrow hallway. She peeked into her son's room. Tommy was still sleeping, his small body curled under a thin blanket. He was 7 years old, with sandy brown hair and the sweetest smile Sarah had ever seen. But Tommy was not like other children his age. He was born with cerebral palsy, a condition that made it hard for him to walk and move like other kids. Sarah watched him sleep for a moment. Her heart ached with love and worry. Tommy needed special doctors, therapy sessions, and expensive medicines. The bills kept coming, piling up on the kitchen table like an impossible mountain. No matter how hard Sarah worked, the money was never enough. She walked to the kitchen and made herself a cup of instant coffee. The apartment was small and cold. The heater barely worked, and winter was coming. Sarah looked around at the empty walls and old furniture. Everything they owned was second-hand or broken. But it was home, and she was grateful they had a roof over their heads. At 6:30, Tommy's caregiver arrived. Mrs. Garcia was a kind, elderly woman who watched Tommy while Sarah worked. She charged very little money because she loved Tommy like her own grandson. Sarah did not know what she would do without Mrs. Garcia's help. "Good morning, Sarah," Mrs. Garcia said softly as she entered the apartment. "Good morning," Sarah replied, grabbing her purse and jacket. "Tommy is still sleeping. His medicine is on the counter. Thank you so much for coming. Don't worry about anything. We will be fine," Mrs. Garcia said with a warm smile. Sarah hurried out the door and walked to the bus stop. She could not afford a car. The bus took 40 minutes to reach the diner, but she always arrived on time. At the diner, she served breakfast to tired workers and impatient business people. Her feet hurt, her back ached, but she smiled at every customer. She needed this job. She needed both jobs. During her break, Sarah sat in the back room and counted her tips. $12. She sighed and put the money in her pocket. Every penny mattered. She thought about Tommy and wondered what he was doing right now. Was he playing? Was he happy? When her shift ended, Sarah rushed to catch the bus to her second job. At the grocery store, she stocked shelves and ran the cash register. Her manager was not very kind, but the job paid slightly better than the diner. Sarah worked until her hands were sore and her legs felt like they might give out. Finally, at 9:15, she walked through her apartment door. Mrs. Garcia was reading a book on the couch. Tommy was in his room, already in his pajamas. "How was he today?" Sarah asked, setting down her purse. "He was wonderful, as always," Mrs. Garcia replied. "He asked about you several times. That boy loves his mama very much." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. "Thank you, Mrs. Garcia. I don't know what I would do without you." After Mrs. Garcia left, Sarah went to Tommy's room. He was sitting on his bed, holding his stuffed elephant. The toy was old and worn out. The gray fabric was faded to almost white in some spots. One ear had been sewn back on with mismatched thread. The elephant's name was Mr. Trunk, and it was the only toy Tommy had. "Mommy." Tommy's face lit up when he saw her. His speech was a little slow and sometimes hard to understand, but Sarah always knew what he meant. "Hi, baby," Sarah said, sitting on the edge of his bed. She hugged him close and kissed the top of his head. "Did you have a good day?" "Yes. Mrs. Garcia and I played games. And Mr. Trunk had an adventure. He saved a kingdom from dragons," Tommy said, holding up the elephant proudly. Sarah smiled, even though her heart was breaking. Tommy created entire worlds with just that one toy. He never asked for more. He never complained that other kids had toys and games and things he did not have. He was happy with Mr. Trunk and his imagination. "That sounds like a very brave adventure," Sarah said softly. Tommy nodded seriously. "Mr. Trunk is the bravest elephant in the whole world." Sarah looked at the toy her mother had given Tommy before she passed away 3 years ago. It was the last gift from Tommy's grandmother, and it meant everything to him. Sarah wished she could buy him new toys, new clothes, new everything, but there was never enough money. After paying rent, utilities, food, and Tommy's medical bills, there was nothing left. "Time for bed, sweetheart," Sarah said gently. Tommy lay down, clutching Mr. Trunk to his chest. Sarah tucked the blanket around him and kissed his forehead. "I love you, Mommy," Tommy whispered. "I love you too, baby. More than anything in the world," Sarah replied. She turned off the light and closed the door halfway. Then she went to the kitchen and sat at the table. She pulled out the stack of bills and looked at them. Electric bill, past due, water bill, final notice, doctor's bill. She put her head in her hands and let herself cry quietly. She was so tired. Tired of working so hard and still not having enough. Tired of seeing her son make do with so little. Tired of feeling like she was failing him every single day. But then she thought about Tommy's smile. She thought about how he never complained, how he found joy in the smallest things, how he loved her no matter what. That little boy was her whole world. He gave her a reason to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep hoping that somehow things would get better. Sarah wiped her tears and stood up. She would work harder. She would find a way. She always did. Tomorrow would come and she would face it the same way she faced every day. With love for her son and determination in her heart. She did not know that very soon something was going to happen that would change their lives forever. She did not know that Tommy's kind heart would lead them to a miracle. All she knew was that she loved her son, and she would do anything for him. Sarah turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. Another day was ending, and another would begin in just a few hours. Saturday morning arrived with gray clouds and cool air. Sarah had the day off from both jobs, which was rare. She wanted to do something special with Tommy. They did not have money to go anywhere fancy, but there was a park nearby that Tommy loved. It had smooth paths where she could push his wheelchair and a pond where ducks swam. "Tommy, would you like to go to the park today?" Sarah asked during breakfast. Tommy's eyes grew wide with excitement. "Yes, can Mr. Trunk come too?" Sarah smiled. "Of course Mr. Trunk can come." After breakfast, Sarah helped Tommy get dressed in his warmest clothes. The weather was getting colder, and autumn was showing its colors. She bundled him up in a jacket that was slightly too small. He had grown over the past year, but new clothes would have to wait. She made a mental note to check the thrift store next week. Sarah lifted Tommy into his wheelchair. He was getting heavier and her back protested, but she did not let him see her wince. Tommy placed Mr. Trunk carefully on his lap, making sure the elephant was comfortable for the journey. They left the apartment and made their way to the park. It was only 3 blocks away, but pushing the wheelchair uphill made Sarah's arms burn. Still, hearing Tommy's happy chatter made every step worth it. When they reached the park, Tommy's face lit up. The trees were beautiful shades of orange, red, and yellow. Leaves covered the ground like a colorful carpet. A few families were scattered around the park. Children played on the swings and slides. Sarah felt a pang of sadness that Tommy could not run and play like them, but he never seemed to mind. He found his own ways to enjoy the world. "Look, Mommy, the ducks are here." Tommy pointed toward the pond. Sarah pushed his wheelchair along the path toward the water. They watched the ducks paddle around, dipping their heads under the surface to search for food. Tommy laughed with delight every time a duck quacked. "Mr. Trunk likes the ducks," Tommy said, holding up his elephant so it could see better. "I'm sure he does," Sarah said warmly. She sat down on a bench next to Tommy's wheelchair, grateful for a moment to rest. They sat there peacefully for a while, just enjoying being together. Sarah felt some of the weight lift from her shoulders. Days like this were precious. No work, no bills, just her and her son enjoying simple happiness. Then Tommy's attention shifted. He was looking across the park toward another bench. Sarah followed his gaze and saw what had caught his eye. On a bench about 30 feet away sat a woman and a small child. The woman looked young, maybe in her 20s. Her clothes were dirty and torn. Her hair was tangled and messy. Her face was thin, too thin, and her eyes looked empty and scared. Next to her sat a little boy who looked about 5 years old. He was crying softly, his small shoulders shaking. The boy wore a t-shirt that was far too thin for the cool weather. He had no jacket. His pants had holes in them and his shoes were falling apart. His face was smudged with dirt and tears rolled down his cheeks. Sarah's heart clenched. She recognized that look of desperation on the woman's face. It was the same look she saw in her own mirror every morning. But this woman had it worse. Sarah could tell they were homeless. They probably had no place to sleep, no food, nothing. The woman was trying to comfort her son, stroking his hair and speaking softly to him. But the boy kept crying, shivering in the cold air. Sarah wanted to help, but what could she do? She barely had enough for herself and Tommy. She had maybe $15 in her purse. That was supposed to last them until her next paycheck. She felt helpless and guilty for not being able to do more. Tommy was staring at the mother and child with intense focus. His small face was serious, the way it got when he was thinking hard about something. He clutched Mr. Trunk a little tighter. "Mommy, why is that little boy crying?" Tommy asked quietly. Sarah chose her words carefully. "I think he and his mother are going through a very hard time, sweetheart. They might not have a home right now." Tommy's eyes widened. "No home? Where do they sleep?" "I don't know, baby. Maybe in a shelter, or maybe they don't have anywhere to sleep," Sarah said softly. Tommy looked down at Mr. Trunk in his lap. He ran his small fingers over the elephant's worn fabric. Sarah could see the wheels turning in her son's mind. She knew that look. Tommy was the most empathetic child she had ever known. Even though he had his own challenges, he always noticed when others were hurting. "He's cold," Tommy said, still watching the little boy. "He doesn't have a jacket." "I know, honey. It's very sad," Sarah agreed. They sat in silence for a few minutes. The little boy across the park continued to cry. His mother looked like she might cry too. She held her son close, trying to warm him with her own body. Tommy kept staring. Then he looked down at Mr. Trunk again. He hugged the elephant tight, pressing his face into the soft, worn fabric. Sarah saw him take a deep breath. "Mommy," Tommy said quietly, "that boy needs help." "Yes, he does," Sarah said, wondering where this conversation was going. "He needs someone to make him feel better," Tommy continued. Sarah nodded, feeling tears building behind her eyes. She was so proud of her son's compassion, but also worried about what he might be thinking. Tommy was quiet for another moment. Then he looked up at his mother with those big, kind eyes. "Mr. Trunk helps me when I'm sad. He makes the scary things go away." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She suddenly understood what Tommy was thinking, and panic mixed with pride in her chest. "Tommy, she started to say, but she did not know how to finish. Tommy looked at Mr. Trunk one more time. He kissed the elephant's faded head. Then he looked at the crying boy across the park. His little face was determined but also sad. "Can we go over there, Mommy?" Tommy asked. Sarah's hands trembled. "Tommy, are you sure about this?" "That boy needs Mr. Trunk more than me right now," Tommy said simply. Sarah felt tears spill down her cheeks. Her 7-year-old son, who had so little, who faced his own challenges every day, wanted to give away his only treasure. The only toy that brought him comfort and joy. The last gift from his grandmother. "Oh, Tommy," Sarah whispered. "You have the biggest heart. Can we go to them, Mommy? Please?" Tommy asked again. Sarah looked at her son's face. She saw determination, compassion, and love. How could she say no, even though every part of her wanted to protect Tommy's happiness and keep his beloved toy safe? She knew this was important to him. "Okay, sweetheart," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "If you're really sure." "I'm sure," Tommy said with a small, brave smile. Sarah stood up and moved behind Tommy's wheelchair. Her hands gripped the handles tightly. She took a deep breath and began pushing Tommy across the park, toward the homeless mother and her crying child. With every step, Sarah's heart broke a little more, knowing what was about to happen. Sarah's heart pounded as she pushed Tommy's wheelchair across the park. Each step felt heavy, like she was walking through deep water. She knew what was about to happen, and it filled her with both incredible pride and deep sadness. The homeless woman noticed them approaching. Her body tensed and she pulled her crying son closer. She had the look of someone who expected trouble, someone who had been hurt too many times. Her eyes were wary and defensive. Sarah stopped the wheelchair a few feet away, not wanting to scare them. She tried to smile gently. "Hello," she said softly. "We don't mean to bother you." The woman did not respond. She just held her son tighter and watched them carefully. The little boy had stopped crying for a moment and was looking at Tommy with red, swollen eyes. Tommy did not seem scared or nervous. He was looking at the little boy with kindness in his eyes. He held Mr. Trunk in his lap, his small hands gentle on the worn fabric. "Hi," Tommy said to the little boy. His voice was soft and friendly, even though speaking took effort for him. "What's your name?" The little boy sniffled and wiped his nose with his sleeve. He looked at his mother, who gave him a small nod. "Daniel," the boy whispered. "That's a nice name," Tommy said with a smile. "I'm Tommy, and this is my mom." Daniel looked at Tommy's wheelchair and then at Tommy's face. Children were often curious about the wheelchair, but Daniel did not ask questions. Maybe he was too sad, or maybe he understood that everyone had their own struggles. "Why are you crying?" Tommy asked gently. Daniel's lower lip trembled. "I'm cold, and I'm scared, and I miss my room and my bed." Fresh tears started rolling down his cheeks. The homeless woman's face crumpled with pain. "Daniel, baby, I'm sorry. Mama's trying to fix everything. I promise," she said, her voice breaking. Sarah's throat tightened. She wanted to reach out and hug this woman, this mother who was clearly doing everything she could in an impossible situation. Tommy looked down at Mr. Trunk. He stroked the elephant's ear, the one that had been sewn back on. For a moment, Sarah thought maybe Tommy had changed his mind. Maybe he would keep his beloved toy after all. She would not blame him. No one would blame him, but then Tommy took a deep breath. He lifted Mr. Trunk up and held him out toward Daniel. "Here," Tommy said. "You can have him." Daniel stared at the stuffed elephant with wide eyes. The homeless woman looked shocked. "Oh no, sweetie, we can't take your toy," she said quickly. But Tommy kept holding Mr. Trunk out, his arms trembling slightly from the effort. "It's okay. He's very special. He keeps the bad dreams away and makes you feel safe when you're scared." Daniel looked at the elephant, then at Tommy, then at his mother. "Mama?" he asked uncertainly. "We can't accept that, honey." "That's his toy," the woman said to her son, though her voice was not as firm as before. Tommy moved his wheelchair a little closer. Sarah had to fight the urge to pull him back to protect him from the hurt she knew was coming. "Mr. Trunk was a gift from my grandma," Tommy explained to Daniel. His speech was slow but clear. "She's in heaven now, but she told me Mr. Trunk has special powers. He makes everything feel better." Sarah's tears were flowing freely now. She tried to wipe them away quietly. Tommy continued, still holding out the elephant. "You're really cold and really sad. You need him more than me right now. Mr. Trunk wants to help you." Daniel reached out slowly and touched the elephant's trunk. His small fingers traced the worn fabric. "He's soft," Daniel whispered. "He gives the best hugs," Tommy said with a gentle smile. "And at night, if you hold him close, he chases all the scary things away. He's very brave." The homeless woman had tears streaming down her face now. "Son, this is too much. We can't take your only toy." Tommy looked at her with those wise old eyes that seemed too knowing for a 7-year-old. "My mommy works very hard to take care of me. I know she wishes she could buy me lots of toys, but we don't have money for that. Mr. Trunk is my only toy, but I have a home and a bed and food. Daniel doesn't have those things right now. He needs Mr. Trunk more." Sarah put her hand on Tommy's shoulder. She was crying so hard she could barely see. Her son's generosity and wisdom overwhelmed her. How had she raised such an amazing child? Tommy placed Mr. Trunk in Daniel's arms. "Take good care of him, okay? And remember, when you're scared or sad, just hug him tight. He'll make you feel better. I promise." Daniel wrapped his arms around the elephant and buried his face in the soft fabric. His crying stopped. He held Mr. Trunk like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you," Daniel whispered into the elephant's ear. The homeless woman was sobbing now. She reached out and touched Tommy's hand. "You are an angel. A real angel. Thank you so much. You don't know what this means." Tommy smiled, but Sarah could see tears gathering in his eyes too. "Mr. Trunk will take care of him. That's what he does best." Sarah knew they needed to leave before Tommy's emotions overwhelmed him. "We should go now, sweetheart," she said softly. Tommy nodded. He looked at Daniel one more time. "Bye, Daniel. I hope things get better for you and your mom." "Bye, Tommy," Daniel said, hugging Mr. Trunk tighter. "Thank you for Mr. Trunk." Sarah turned the wheelchair around and started pushing Tommy back across the park. She heard the homeless woman call out behind them. "God bless you both. Thank you. Thank you so much." Sarah could not respond. She was crying too hard. She just kept walking, pushing Tommy away from the scene that had just broken and filled her heart at the same time. They were halfway across the park when Tommy started crying. The tears came quietly at first, then harder. His small shoulders shook with sobs. Sarah stopped the wheelchair and came around to kneel in front of her son. She took his hands in hers. "Oh, baby, I'm so proud of you. I miss Mr. Trunk already," Tommy cried. "But Daniel needed him." "He really needed him, Mommy. I know, sweetheart. You did something so beautiful and kind." "That was the most selfless thing I've ever seen," Sarah said, pulling Tommy into a hug. "Grandma would be happy, right? That Mr. Trunk is helping someone?" Tommy asked through his tears. Sarah held him tighter. Yes, baby. Grandma would be so incredibly proud of you. I'm so proud of you. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other and crying. Other people in the park walked by, some glancing at them curiously, but no one stopped. They did not know what had just happened. They did not know they had witnessed something extraordinary. Finally, Sarah pulled back and wiped Tommy's tears. Let's go home, okay? Tommy nodded, still crying softly. Sarah stood up and began pushing the wheelchair toward the park exit. She looked back once and saw Daniel still holding Mr. Trunk, his face pressed against the elephant. The homeless woman was holding her son close, rocking him gently. The walk home was quiet except for Tommy's occasional sniffles. When they reached their apartment building, Sarah's arms were shaking from pushing the wheelchair uphill while her heart was breaking. Inside their small apartment, Sarah helped Tommy out of his jacket and into his room. He climbed onto his bed, and for the first time in years there was no Mr. Trunk waiting for him. The spot where the elephant usually sat looked terribly empty. Tommy stared at that empty spot and started crying again. Sarah lay down next to him and held him close. It's okay to be sad, Tommy. You loved Mr. Trunk very much. It's okay to miss him, Sarah whispered. I know I did the right thing, Tommy said through his tears. But it hurts, Mommy, it really hurts. I know, baby. Sometimes doing the right thing hurts, but you gave that little boy hope and comfort when he needed it most. That's the most important thing anyone can do. They lay together until Tommy cried himself to sleep. Sarah stroked his hair and sang softly to him. When he finally drifted off, his face was still wet with tears. Sarah got up carefully and went to the living room. She sat on the couch and let herself cry hard. For everything they did not have, for the toy her son had sacrificed, for the beautiful heart her little boy possessed, and for the unfairness of a world where children suffered and mothers could not give their kids everything they deserved. That night, Tommy woke up 3 times reaching for Mr. Trunk. Each time, Sarah came to his room and held him until he fell back asleep. It was the hardest night they had experienced in a long time. What Sarah and Tommy did not know was that someone else had been in the park that day. Someone who had watched everything unfold from a distance. Someone whose life was about to intersect with theirs in ways none of them could imagine. Marcus Chen sat on a bench about 50 feet away from where the whole scene had happened. He was an elderly man, 73 years old, with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen many years of both joy and sorrow. He came to this park every Saturday, had been coming for 5 years now, ever since his grandson died. Marcus was a wealthy man. He had built a successful toy manufacturing company over 40 years, creating stuffed animals and toys that brought happiness to children all over the country. His company had made him millions of dollars. He had a large house, expensive cars, and more money than he could ever spend. But none of that mattered anymore. Not since the day his grandson Michael passed away. Michael had cerebral palsy, just like Tommy. He had been such a bright, loving child despite his challenges. Marcus and his wife had adored that boy. They spent every moment they could with him. Marcus would bring Michael new stuffed animals from his factory every week. Michael's room had been filled with elephants, bears, dogs, and every creature imaginable. Michael's favorite had been a gray elephant, much like the one Tommy had just given away. Michael called it Trumpet and took it everywhere. Even to the hospital during his final days. Michael died when he was 8 years old. Complications from his condition took him far too soon. Marcus's wife, Helen, died 2 years later from a broken heart. That was what the doctors called it officially, but Marcus knew the truth. She had died from grief. They both had, in a way. Marcus was still breathing, still walking around, but a huge part of him had died with Michael and Helen. For the past 5 years, Marcus came to this park every Saturday. It was the park where he used to bring Michael. They would feed the ducks, watch the other children play, and talk about everything and nothing. Coming here was the only way Marcus felt close to his grandson anymore. He usually sat on the same bench, lost in memories, watching families enjoy the park. It brought him comfort and pain in equal measure. Today had started like every other Saturday. He arrived at the park, sat on his bench, and let the memories wash over him. Then he noticed the woman pushing a wheelchair. At first, his heart clenched because the sight reminded him so much of the times he pushed Michael's wheelchair along these same paths. But then he looked closer and saw the little boy in the wheelchair. He saw the child smile, the way he held a worn stuffed elephant, the way he looked at the world with wonder despite his obvious physical challenges. Marcus could not look away. It was like seeing Michael again, seeing the same spirit and joy that his grandson had possessed. Then Marcus noticed the homeless woman and her crying child on the bench. He had seen them earlier and felt sorry for them, but he had not done anything to help. He was lost in his own grief, his own problems. What was one more sad story in a world full of them? But then he watched as the woman with the wheelchair pushed the little boy across the park toward the homeless family. Marcus sat up straighter, curious about what was happening. He was close enough to hear some of the conversation, though not all of it. He watched as the boy in the wheelchair held out his stuffed elephant. Marcus saw the homeless woman try to refuse. He saw the little boy insist, saw him place that worn elephant into the other child's arms with such tenderness and care. Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest. He stood up from his bench, moving closer but staying hidden behind a tree. He needed to see this better, to understand what he was witnessing. He heard the boy say that the elephant kept bad dreams away. He heard him say that the other child needed it more. Marcus watched as the boy gave away what was clearly his only toy, his most precious possession, to a stranger who was suffering. Tears began streaming down Marcus's face. He had not cried in years, had thought himself empty of tears. But watching this scene broke something loose inside him. The boy in the wheelchair reminded him so much of Michael. The same condition, the same wheelchair, even a similar stuffed elephant. But more than that, the same beautiful spirit, the same capacity for love and kindness that Marcus had seen in his grandson. Marcus watched as the mother and son left the park, both of them crying. He saw the pain on their faces, the sacrifice that had just been made. He stood there behind the tree for a long time, unable to move. Something was stirring in Marcus's heart, something that had been asleep for 5 years. Purpose, meaning, a reason to care about the world again. He made a decision right then. He needed to know who this family was. He needed to find them. Marcus followed them at a distance, staying far enough back that they would not notice him. He was not trying to be creepy or threatening. He just needed to know where they lived, who they were. Something deep inside told him this was important. He followed them to a run-down apartment building on the poor side of town. He watched as the mother struggled to push the wheelchair up the ramp, watched as they disappeared inside. Marcus wrote down the address in his phone and stood outside for a few minutes thinking. The building was in terrible condition. Paint was peeling, windows were cracked, and the whole place looked like it might fall apart. This family was clearly struggling, probably more than he had initially realized. Marcus walked back to his car, his mind racing. He drove home to his large empty house on the hill. The house had 6 bedrooms, a huge kitchen, a library, and more space than one person could ever need. It echoed with emptiness. That evening, Marcus could not stop thinking about what he had witnessed. He sat in his study, surrounded by photos of Michael and Helen. He looked at his grandson's smiling face in the pictures and felt that familiar ache in his chest. "What should I do, Michael?" Marcus whispered to the photo. "What would you want me to do?" He knew the answer. Michael would want him to help that family. Michael had always been generous, always thinking of others even when he was sick and in pain. That little boy in the park had the same spirit. Marcus had spent the last 5 years drowning in grief and guilt. Guilt that he had not been able to save Michael. Guilt that he had all this money and success but could not buy his grandson more time. Guilt that he was alive and they were gone. He had a foundation that did charitable work, but he barely paid attention to it anymore. He had staff who ran everything while he just signed checks and went through the motions. The foundation had lost its meaning after Michael died. Everything had lost its meaning, but today, for the first time in 5 years, Marcus felt a spark of something. Hope, maybe, or purpose. He was not sure what to call it. He spent hours that night researching. He used the address to find out more about the family. Public records showed that the apartment was rented by Sarah Mitchell, a single mother. He found out she worked 2 jobs. He discovered that her son, Tommy, was 7 years old and had cerebral palsy. The more Marcus learned, the more he felt this was not a coincidence. This was meant to happen. He was meant to be in that park today. He was meant to see what that little boy did. Marcus had money, more than he could ever use. His company was still successful, still making toys that children loved. His foundation had millions of dollars ready to help people, and yet he had been sitting in this empty house for years, doing nothing meaningful with any of it. Michael would be so disappointed in him. Michael would want him to use his resources to help others, especially children like himself who faced challenges and struggles. Marcus made another decision that night. He was going to help this family. He did not know exactly how yet, but he knew he had to do something. That little boy's act of kindness had awakened something in Marcus that he thought was dead forever. He thought about the toy company he had built. He had started it because he wanted to bring joy to children. He remembered the excitement he felt when he saw a child smile because of one of his toys. When had he lost that feeling? When had everything become just about money and business? Marcus stayed up late into the night planning. He thought about what this family might need. Job opportunities for the mother, medical care for the boy, a better place to live, education, support, hope. He could provide all of that. He had the means, and now, finally, he had the motivation. As the sun began to rise, Marcus finally went to bed, but he could not sleep. His mind was too active, too full of plans and possibilities. He kept seeing that little boy's face, kept seeing him give away his most precious possession to help a stranger. That was the kind of person Marcus wanted to be again. That was the kind of person Michael had been. That was the kind of person his foundation should be helping and supporting. Marcus got out of bed and went back to his study. He looked at Michael's photo again. "I'm going to make you proud, buddy," he whispered. "I'm going to help that boy and his mother. I'm going to do what you would want me to do." For the first time in 5 years, Marcus Chen felt alive again. 3 days passed since that Saturday in the park. 3 very difficult days for Tommy and Sarah. Tommy tried to be brave. He did not complain much, but Sarah could see the sadness in his eyes. At night, he would reach for Mr. Trunk in his sleep and wake up when his hand found only empty space. Sarah would come to his room and hold him until he fell back asleep. Her heart broke a little more each time. During the day, Tommy played his usual imagination games, but something was missing. The stories he created were quieter, less exciting. When Mrs. Garcia asked if he wanted to play pretend adventures, Tommy said yes, but his smile did not reach his eyes like it used to. Sarah felt terrible. She kept thinking about that worn elephant, about how much it had meant to Tommy, about how it was the last gift from his grandmother. Part of her wished she could go back to that park and find the homeless family, ask for Mr. Trunk back. But she knew that was selfish. That little boy needed the comfort too, and Tommy had made his choice freely out of love and compassion. Still, it hurt to watch her son suffer. Sarah lay awake at night wondering if there was anything she could do to help Tommy feel better. Maybe she could save some money and buy a new stuffed animal from the thrift store. It would not be the same, but it might help fill the empty space. Wednesday morning arrived cold and rainy. Sarah was home because she had finally asked for a day off. She needed to catch up on laundry, pay bills, and clean the apartment. Tommy was sitting in the living room, drawing pictures with his crayons. He was drawing Mr. Trunk, trying to remember every detail of his old friend. Around 10 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Sarah was not expecting anyone. Mrs. Garcia did not come on Wednesdays. The landlord had already been by for rent. She felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. Unexpected visitors usually meant problems. She went to the door and looked through the peephole. An elderly man stood in the hallway. He was well dressed in a nice coat and clean shoes. He looked kind, not threatening. But Sarah did not know him. She opened the door a crack, keeping the chain lock on. "Yes, can I help you?" The man smiled gently. "Hello, my name is Marcus Chen. Are you Sarah Mitchell?" Sarah's nervousness increased. How did this stranger know her name? "Yes, what is this about?" Marcus held up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "Please don't be afraid. I know this is unexpected and probably seems strange. Could I talk to you for just a few minutes? I promise I'm not here to cause any trouble." "How do you know my name?" "What do you want?" Sarah asked, not opening the door any further. "I was at the park on Saturday. I saw what your son did, how he gave his stuffed elephant to that homeless child. I was so moved by his kindness that I wanted to meet you both. I have something important to discuss with you," Marcus explained. Sarah's mind raced. This man had been at the park.
He had seen what Tommy did?
Why would he come here? Was this some kind of scam? "I don't understand," Sarah said slowly. "Why would you come to my home because of that?" Marcus's eyes were sincere and warm. "I know this seems strange, but please just give me a few minutes to explain." What your son did touched my heart in a way I can't fully describe. I would like to help your family if you'll let me. Help her family? Sarah's suspicion grew stronger. People did not just show up offering to help. There was always a catch, always something they wanted in return. I appreciate that, but we're fine. We don't need any help, Sarah said, starting to close the door. Please, Marcus said quickly. I understand your caution. I'm a stranger showing up at your door. That would make anyone nervous. But I'm serious about this. I have a job opportunity to discuss with you, and I would like to help with your son's medical expenses. Sarah froze. A job opportunity? Help with medical expenses? This had to be too good to be true. Things like this did not happen in real life. Why would you do that? Sarah asked, her hand still on the door. Because your son reminded me of someone very special. Because watching him give away his most precious possession to help a stranger reminded me what kindness really looks like. And because I have the means to help and I should be using those means to make a difference, Marcus said simply. Tommy's voice came from behind Sarah. Mommy? Who is it? Sarah turned to see Tommy rolling his wheelchair toward the door. She looked back at Marcus, then at her son, then back at Marcus again. Marcus bent down slightly so he could see Tommy through the crack in the door.
Hello, Tommy, I'm Marcus.
I saw what you did in the park on Saturday. That was the kindest thing I've ever seen. Tommy's face lit up a little. You saw me give Mr. Trunk to Daniel? I did. You have a very big heart, young man, Marcus said warmly. Sarah watched this exchange and felt her defenses lowering slightly. This man seemed genuinely kind. But she had to protect Tommy and herself. She could not just trust a stranger. Please, just let me come in and explain everything, Marcus said. If you don't like what I have to say, I'll leave immediately and never bother you again. But I think you'll want to hear this. Sarah hesitated. Every protective instinct told her to say no and close the door. But another part of her, the desperate part that was so tired of struggling, wanted to hear what he had to say. What if this was real? What if someone actually wanted to help them? Mommy, he seems nice, Tommy said quietly. Sarah made a decision. She closed the door, unhooked the chain lock, and opened it fully. Okay, you can come in. But my neighbor knows you're here, and if anything seems wrong, I'm calling the police. This was a lie, but she wanted him to think someone knew he was there. Marcus nodded understandingly. That's very smart. You should be cautious. Sarah stepped aside and let Marcus enter. The apartment suddenly seemed even smaller and shabbier with this well-dressed man standing in it. Sarah felt embarrassed about the worn furniture, the peeling paint, and the general poverty that was obvious everywhere. But Marcus did not seem to notice or care. He smiled at Tommy. It's nice to meet you properly, Tommy. It's nice to meet you too, Tommy said politely. Sarah gestured to the couch. Please sit down. Can I get you water or anything? No, thank you. I'm fine, Marcus said, sitting down carefully. Sarah sat in the chair across from him, and Tommy rolled his wheelchair next to her. She put a protective hand on Tommy's shoulder. Marcus took a breath and began. Let me start by telling you a little about myself. I own a toy manufacturing company. We make stuffed animals and toys for children. I started the company over 40 years ago, and it's been very successful. Sarah nodded but said nothing. She was still waiting for the catch. I had a grandson named Michael, Marcus continued, and his voice got softer. He had cerebral palsy just like Tommy. He was the light of my life. My wife and I loved him more than anything in the world. Tommy leaned forward with interest. Really, he had CP like me? Yes, he did. He was a wonderful boy, so brave and kind, just like you, Marcus said with a sad smile. Michael passed away 5 years ago. He was 8 years old. I'm sorry, Tommy said quietly. Thank you, Tommy. I miss him every single day, Marcus replied. After Michael died and then my wife passed too, I kind of stopped living. I kept working, kept the business going, but my heart was not in it anymore. I started a foundation to help people, but I stopped caring about it. I just went through the motions of life without really living. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She understood that kind of grief, that kind of loss. On Saturday, I was at the park where I used to take Michael. Marcus continued. I go there every week to feel close to him. And then I saw you both. Tommy, when I saw you in that wheelchair holding that elephant, smiling at the world despite your challenges, it was like seeing Michael again. Tommy's eyes were wide as he listened. Then I watched you give your elephant to that little boy. I watched you put someone else's needs above your own. I watched you perform an act of pure kindness and love that, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, and something inside me woke up. Something that had been dead for 5 years came back to life. Marcus wiped his eyes. I realized I had been wasting my time and resources feeling sorry for myself when there are children like you in the world, children who need help, children who deserve better. Michael would be so disappointed in me for giving up like I did. Sarah found herself crying now too. This was not what she had expected at all. So I decided I need to do something meaningful with my life again, Marcus said, and I want to start by helping your family. Sarah sat frozen in her chair, afraid to believe what she was hearing. Marcus reached into his coat pocket and pulled out some papers. I run a foundation called the Michael Chen Foundation for Children, Marcus explained. We help families who are struggling, especially families with children who have medical challenges. The foundation has been running on autopilot for years, but I want to change that. I want to be actively involved again. He handed the papers to Sarah. I would like to offer you a job as the Director of Community Outreach for the foundation. Your job would be to find families who need help and coordinate our support services. The salary is $80,000 a year, plus full health benefits for you and Tommy. Sarah's hands shook as she looked at the papers. $80,000. That was more than 3 times what she made working 2 jobs. She could not speak. This could not be real. Additionally, the foundation will cover all of Tommy's medical expenses, Marcus continued. All his therapies, doctor visits, medications, equipment, everything. You won't have to worry about medical bills anymore. Tommy looked up at his mother with wide eyes. Mommy, does that mean you won't have to work 2 jobs anymore? Sarah could not answer. She was crying too hard. She put her face in her hands and sobbed. Years of stress, fear, exhaustion, and worry came pouring out. It was too much. This was too good to be true. It had to be some kind of trick. Marcus's voice was gentle. Sarah, I know this seems overwhelming. I know you're probably scared that this is not real. But I promise you, this is completely legitimate. I have references. I have documentation. I can show you everything about the foundation and my company. Sarah looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Why? Why would you do this for us? We're nobody. You're not nobody, Marcus said firmly. You're a mother who works 2 jobs to take care of her son. You're a child who gave away his most precious possession to help a stranger. You're exactly the kind of people the world needs more of. You're exactly the kind of people I should be helping. Tommy reached over and took his mother's hand. Mommy, I think it's okay. I think he really wants to help us. Sarah looked at her son's trusting face. When had he become so wise? She looked back at Marcus and saw only sincerity in his eyes. This is real, she whispered. This is really happening? It's really happening, Marcus confirmed with a smile. If you accept the job, you can start next week. We'll help you find a better place to live, somewhere safe and comfortable. You'll never have to worry about how to pay Tommy's medical bills again. You'll be able to give Tommy the life he deserves. Sarah broke down completely. She cried like she had never cried before. Tommy wrapped his arms around her and she held him close. All the fear, all the struggle, all the impossible weight she had been carrying for so long was suddenly lifting. Yes, Sarah managed to say between sobs. Yes, I accept. Thank you. Thank you so much. Marcus smiled and Sarah could see tears in his eyes too. No, thank you. You and Tommy are giving me a reason to care about life again. You're helping me honor Michael's memory in a meaningful way. Over the next few weeks, everything changed for Sarah and Tommy. Marcus helped them move into a small but beautiful house in a safe neighborhood. It had 3 bedrooms, a real kitchen, and a backyard where Tommy could play. The house was equipped with ramps and wide doorways for Tommy's wheelchair. Sarah started her new job and she was good at it. She understood what struggling families needed because she had been one of them. She found families who needed help and connected them with the foundation's resources. She only worked normal hours Monday through Friday. No more late nights, no more working 2 jobs. She could actually be home with Tommy in the evenings. Tommy started getting the best medical care available. He began intensive physical therapy 3 times a week. His doctors were amazed at how much progress he was making. Tommy was getting stronger, his speech was improving, and he was smiling all the time now. Marcus visited them often. He became like a grandfather to Tommy. They would sit in the backyard and talk for hours. Marcus told Tommy stories about Michael, and Tommy told Marcus about his adventures and dreams. They had a special bond that healed something in both of them, but Tommy still missed Mr. Trunk. Even with all the wonderful changes, even with the new toys Marcus brought him, Tommy thought about that worn elephant every day. He wondered if Daniel was okay, if Mr. Trunk was keeping him safe. 2 months after that rainy Wednesday when Marcus knocked on their door, he came to visit with a special surprise. Tommy, "Sarah, I have something to show you," Marcus said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "What is it?" Tommy asked from his wheelchair. "Come outside. There are some people here who want to see you," Marcus said mysteriously. Sarah and Tommy followed Marcus out the front door. Standing on their new front lawn were 2 people. A young woman with clean clothes and neat hair and a small boy holding a faded gray elephant. Tommy gasped. "Daniel?" Daniel's face broke into a huge smile. "Tommy, it's me!" The homeless woman, who now looked healthy and strong, smiled at Sarah. "Hello again. We never properly introduced ourselves. I'm Lisa." Sarah was crying again, happy tears this time. "Lisa, it's so good to see you." "You look wonderful," Lisa laughed. "We're doing so much better. Marcus found us a few weeks ago. His foundation helped us get into a shelter, then into our own apartment. I have a job now at a grocery store. Daniel is enrolled in school. Our lives have completely changed." Marcus smiled at everyone. "I thought it was time for a reunion." Daniel walked up to Tommy's wheelchair. He was holding Mr. Trunk carefully like the precious treasure he was. "Tommy, Mr. Trunk helped me so much. Every night when I was scared, I hugged him just like you said. He made everything feel better." Tommy's eyes filled with tears as he looked at his old friend. Mr. Trunk looked the same, maybe a little more worn but still the same brave elephant. "But I think it's time Mr. Trunk came home," Daniel said. He held the elephant out to Tommy. "Thank you for letting me borrow him when I really needed him. He saved me, but you should have him back now." Tommy looked at Mr. Trunk, then at Daniel, then at his mother. Sarah nodded, understanding what her son was thinking. "Daniel," Tommy said slowly, "Mr. Trunk was supposed to help you. That was his mission. I want you to keep him." Daniel's eyes widened. "Really, but he's yours. Your grandma gave him to you." Tommy smiled, and it was the most beautiful smile Sarah had ever seen on his face. "My grandma would want Mr. Trunk to help someone who needs him. You still need him. He should stay with you." Lisa put her hand over her heart, crying. Marcus wiped his eyes. Sarah wrapped her arms around Tommy's shoulders, but Daniel shook his head. "Mr. Trunk taught me to be brave and kind, just like you, Tommy. I don't need him to feel safe anymore because I know I have friends like you in the world. But maybe we can share him." Tommy's face lit up. "Share him?" "Yeah. Sometimes he can stay with me, and sometimes he can stay with you. That way we both have him and we have to visit each other to trade," Daniel explained. Tommy laughed, a real joyful laugh. "That's perfect. That's the best idea ever." Daniel placed Mr. Trunk in Tommy's lap. Tommy hugged the elephant close, breathing in the familiar smell, feeling the soft, worn fabric. "I missed you, Mr. Trunk," he whispered. "Mr. Trunk missed you too," Daniel said. "He told me so every night." Sarah invited Lisa and Daniel inside. They all sat in the living room, drinking juice and eating cookies that Sarah had baked that morning. Tommy and Daniel played together, taking turns telling Mr. Trunk about all the adventures he had missed. Marcus sat with Sarah in the kitchen, watching the children play. "They're going to be good friends," he said. "Thank you," Sarah said for the 100th time. "Thank you for everything. You changed our lives." "No," Marcus said gently. "Tommy changed my life. He reminded me what love and kindness look like. He reminded me why I started my company and my foundation in the first place. He gave me a reason to wake up in the morning." Sarah watched her son laughing with his new friend. Tommy looked so happy, so healthy, so full of life. She thought about where they had been just 2 months ago, struggling in that tiny apartment, barely surviving. Now Tommy had a real home, excellent medical care, a future full of possibilities, and a new friend. "Do you believe in miracles?" Sarah asked Marcus. Marcus looked at Tommy, then at Daniel, then at Mr. Trunk being passed back and forth between the 2 boys. "I do now," he said. "I absolutely do." That evening, after Lisa and Daniel left, Sarah helped Tommy get ready for bed. Mr. Trunk sat on the nightstand right where he belonged. "Mommy, today was the best day ever," Tommy said as Sarah tucked him in. "It was a pretty amazing day," Sarah agreed. "Mr. Trunk came home, and I made a new friend, and Daniel is happy now." Tommy continued. "I'm glad I gave Mr. Trunk to him that day. Even though it was hard and I was sad, it was the right thing to do." Sarah kissed his forehead. I'm so proud of you, Tommy. You have the biggest, kindest heart of anyone I know. Grandma taught me that, Tommy said sleepily. She said the best thing we can do is help people when they need it, even if it's hard for us. Your grandma was a wise woman, Sarah said. Tommy reached out and touched Mr. Trunk. I think this is what Grandma wanted. She wanted Mr. Trunk to help lots of people, not just me.